All right, really privileged to have Ben Spann here today. I've been watching his work on YouTube and his knife campaign. He's also a good friend of Brian Cockrell, who was the guy Wildman looked up to when he was a young person. And before Wildman died last year, Brian was regularly on the phone with Wildman, giving him advice, trying to help him with his health. We were all really concerned. So huge shout out to Brian for, helping Wildman towards the end. Yeah. And I've seen that Ben has done like a 10 question podcast with Brian. And you've got your own channel.
Yeah.
And Brian's got his own channel as well.
Yep.
So we're going to put all those links in the description box if people want to support their work. And Ben's logo, as you can see on the t-shirt, is change your life, put down your knife. So, very important social lessons in this one. We don't like to glamorize crime. We like to give the information out, the stories out to the young people, grip them with the real life stories of people who've been through it in the hope these kids aren't going to get gangsteritis and end up stabbing someone and getting life sentences, because it's really sad. A lot of the cat guys I speak to, they say they see these youngsters coming in now just left and right, massive sentences due to knife crime. There's an absolute epidemic of it in London. It is huge. And our other campaign on the channel is to end the war on drugs and take all that money and go after the predators with it. The justice system is upside down. And what the media doesn't tell you about all these kids getting stabbed in London and these other cities, the vast majority of it revolves around young people trying to make money, trying to hustle, trying to profit from the illegal black market in drugs. End the drug market and you end all the criminality around it, and all these kids wouldn't be dying left or right. So, fantastic work you're doing, Ben.
Cheers, buddy.
What set you on this mission?
So around 2 years ago, I had a bit of a breakdown. Well, I had a massive breakdown. I was thinking about killing myself on a daily basis. Also had visions of suffocating my missus while she was asleep, which then affected me going to sleep, just in case anything. I woke up and something had happened. I'm not saying that I was capable of doing that, but it was just the mindset that I was in. So the breakdown made me reevaluate my life. During my breakdown, I was helping a young lad. His name's Kieran. He was a local lad in my town. And he basically had been stabbed. He was living in a crack den. And although I was suffering and hurting, which I didn't realise at the time that I was actually suffering from depression, I was still helping Kieran, taking him.
And how did you first meet Kieran?
Kieran was a young lad so I've got two stepkids, Georgia and Callum, and Kieran used to play football with Callum. So as the kids were growing up, Kieran was always the lad that turned up at football with dirty clothes, or
just like a teenager then.
Yeah, just a young lad. I think he was 12 at the time.
Wow.
Ended up bumping into him in a pub, gave him some work. I was doing garage conversions at the time, and he explained his situation to me. He was due to be sentenced in Crown Court. He'd been convicted, and he was going for his sentencing.
So what was his conviction, and what age did he commit this crime?
So Kieran would have been about 23. This was probably around just over 2 years ago. And he was getting done for breaking a military police officer's jaw on a night out in a takeaway, just a takeaway kebab house, basically. Ended up pettiness. Someone looked at someone in the wrong way. A few words were exchanged, and Kieran's just turned around and cracked him on his jaw, broke his jaw. Yeah. So he was looking at getting sentenced. He was on his own. He didn't really have no network or support around him. So I've got some references made up, one from the campaign, a few character references from my wife, who's manager of a care home. Kieran was doing things like mowing the lawn for us, and we were just trying to put him onto the right track. I spoke to his barrister at the time at the court case, and we ended up getting his sentence suspended, basically.
Oh, wow.
As long as he adhered to certain rules over a certain period of time, which he did. And so that was the starting point of the campaign, basically. Before I realised that I was actually suffering with depression, I went over to Ireland to sort of clear my head and sort myself out. I've got a little brother that lives over there. Came back, and that was the start of the campaign. I sort of got a sense of satisfaction out of helping Kieran. He'd been stabbed 3 times as well. He was living in a crack den, so we sort of helped him with his anxiety through being stabbed. Put him into, went through the channels of getting him into a hostel.
What was the circumstances of him being stabbed?
He had an argument with one of his friends. His friends obviously felt a bit threatened by him, turned around and stabbed him in his head, in his back, and I think it was in his arm as well. So he was suffering with nightmares and things like that. It proper affected his mental health. But being in them circumstances of selling crack in a grotty house, he's a nice lad that was just vulnerable at the end of the day. So that was the turning point for me and the campaign. So
yeah, and we've had Neil Woods, the ex-cop, on, and he said, the gangs just use these vulnerable young people to move their product, and then they take advantage of the county lines and all this other stuff. Have you experienced or you've learned about all that side of it?
Yeah, so I mean, locally where we are, they tend to send the kids off with little packages, little 20 wraps. They'll charge them 250 quid for it, and they'll make £50 out of themselves. So I mean, they could get rid of it as quickly as going to see half a dozen people, and it could go. Then they'll go and reload again, basically. So they're only ever dealing in small parcels. So if they did end up getting caught, it's not a massive loss to the bigger fish.
How prevalent is crack in these estates? Because I think about like the crack epidemic in the 80s, and when I was in America, there was a lot of crack and crystal meth. But I've not come across it in this country really. But is there a lot of it going on behind the scenes?
I'd say it's the two go together now, heroin and crack. So
Really?
they're doing it both together. 9 times out of 10, if you're a heroin addict, you're also dealing in crack and smoking crack or injecting it, whichever they do.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If you peripherally went to crack, then they're using the heroin to come down off the crack. So the two sort of go together nowadays. So
Is the fentanyl here yet?
I've heard that fentanyl is around. I don't know how big it is, but it's definitely. I did see a program where China or these countries are actually putting small amounts of fentanyl in with the imported heroin that's coming over to obviously make it stronger and more addictive.
Bloody hell. And this is again war on drugs. Drugs get stronger every year, get more dangerous every year, get more prevalent every year, and this is all because of the laws being maintained in place by the politicians whose corporate buddies are profiting from the status quo while kids are dying. Tens of billions a year right now, private prison contracts, and that's just one contractor alone. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of parasitic corporations and other entities making money off the back of human suffering. And we've got to end it. We've got to get those politicians and legislators to change the laws, legalise everything, even do what they did with heroin in Portugal. They got the users halved, and society would be transformed, and we wouldn't have all this knife crime and kids fighting over the illegal black market in drugs and county lines. So it's time for the people to stand up against the government and tell them this has got to be done. All right, so let's you've talked about your depression, and I want to get to the root causes of that. So let's go back then to what your life was like growing up. What was it like for you as a kid? What part of the UK were you raised in?
So I was born in Leamington Spa, a little village called Weston under Weatherly. So we were country lads.
So for people not familiar with where Leamington Spa is in the UK, can you just tell them?
It's in the Midlands. It's just a small town outside Coventry.
Outside, we used to go down to the Eclipse Club, me and Wildman and Ray at the Eclipse in Coventry. Quite close to that.
Yeah, that's it. So my upbringing was good. I came from quite a big family. I had 4 brothers, 4 including myself. I've got an older brother. I'm a twin, and I had a younger brother. My parents split up when I was probably about 12. Both remarried and both had another kid each. My little sister and a younger brother. I can't remember having a bad childhood. My childhood was good. I mean, we never went without anything. Lived with my mum. And yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I had a good upbringing.
And did you do okay at school?
No. School. I couldn't wait to leave school. I mean, I hated school. My GCSEs were crap. It was the best thing leaving school for me. I just didn't feel as if I fitted in at school. You know, I didn't think that. This is something that's a massive issue nowadays. Is the education system's outdated. It's set up for the 85% of the kids that can actually sit down in a classroom and concentrate. The other 15% of the kids, they get labelled either stupid, naughty, you know. But at the end of the day, these kids, is exactly how I fitted into this category. Their way of teaching didn't fit my way of learning, you know.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. I've got a 15-year-old son, and this is a problem that we're having with him at the moment. He's not a stupid lad. He's a clever lad. He's had a good upbringing. But he just doesn't fit into school, and it doesn't fit into that 85% that are absorb the information like the others. So.
And what about PE then? Physical education? Did you do?
I done PE, yeah. Again, wasn't really my cup of tea, to be perfectly honest with you.
So you weren't into sports or anything else then?
Yeah, I like to play football, and I like basketball as well, but was never really involved in. I had a short attention span, so I'd stick at something for a certain amount of time, and then I'd get fed up with it and go on to something else. So.
And did you have many friends at school?
Yeah. I had quite a few friends, so I fitted in well. And that's carried on through my life growing up. Basically, I've always fitted in with people and got on with. I don't really have many enemies as such.
Yeah.
I've always got on with most people. So.
Yeah. So what did you decide to do when it was time to finish school?
So I decided that I wanted to be an electrician.
Right.
Went to college because I had no GCSEs. I had to carry on and do further key skills, which was to get the equivalent in maths, English, and IT. And this was when my the cannabis came into it all. I found cannabis, enjoyed it.
How old were you?
I was 16 when I probably 15 when I started smoking it.
Yeah.
16 when things started. I realised there was a market within my mates to start sort of pushing it towards them. And then sort of the cannabis was a downward spiral from the age of 16, really. So,
all right. So you're on the weed. You're studying to be an electrician. Do you get a job in that field?
Yeah, I was an apprentice for a company called NS Booth Electrical, just a local based company. Ended up there. I was there for 2 years. Lost my job due to selling drugs at work. So I ended up getting the sack.
How did they find out you were doing that?
One of the guys, cheeky bastard, took my phone and read the messages on my phone.
One of your colleagues?
Yeah.
Like a little snitch?
Yeah. So I was unaware of how it all came about until a couple of weeks later. But I was actually on a job, Codemasters, it was in Southam. And the boss come up and just was like, "Get your tools, you're gone," sort of thing.
What a little busybody.
Yeah.
What did he not like you or something, or did he just want to get like kudos from the boss?
So what happened was they sort of figured that something was going on, and I think they wanted to put a finger on what it was. I wasn't collecting my wages each week; I was building them up. I was living off selling cannabis basically and making the money from that. So my wage packets were building up in the office. And I'd probably collect them every, 3 or 4 weeks or whenever I needed to. So they sort of figured that something was going on. And I think they just wanted to put they wanted to know what was happening. So one of them picked my phone up one day. And this was before these bloody fingerprints and stuff like that on the locks. Read my messages and that's how it all came out, yeah.
And what was his position in the firm?
He was just an electrician. I was just his apprentice. He was not a boss or anything like that. So.
And did you speak to him after that? After he snitched you?
Yeah, we had a few words, but I was a 16-year-old kid. Well, actually, I was 18 at the time, but I was quite small and quite timid in that respect. So I just let bygones be bygones and just went my own way, sort of thing. So.
And what did you do next?
From then, I started pushing selling cannabis a little bit further, basically, and turned it into sort of made an income out of it.
How did you get your customers?
they just came sort of naturally through bumping into people. Started off with just my mates, so I realised there was a market there for my friends. They were struggling to get it, so I started selling to them, and then things just expanded and expanded basically. So ended up to the point where I was selling quite a bit. I mean, we were probably doing a kilo a week, I should imagine, which is nothing on some of the scales that other people were doing. But at the age of 18, to me, that was quite a big deal, you know. So
how were you sourcing it?
So it was called import at the time, and I was getting it through a friend of mine. This import, all of a sudden, it just dried up completely, early 2000s, and we went on to hash came back in, but it was hash where you were pulling out black bags out of it, where it was just the quality of it was so poor. Then we did start coming back in again, but it was sprayed with glass and sand, because there was a massive market there. The supply and demand was there, or the demand was there. There was just no supply of it. Yeah. So they were spraying it with sand, which gave you a sore throat, and but it weighed it down. So they were monopolising on it basically.
Yeah.
But this is when I realised there was a market in my electrics and the drug dealing sort of thing. My instinct kicked in, and decided to start rigging electric meters for people that were doing crops locally.
So you can source it from the grower then.
That's how it went. So because there was no import coming in, what was coming in was this sprayed crap basically. This is what opened up the massive market to people growing their own cannabis, and it's just the market for it now is massive.
So you're moving a kilo a week before the growing business. How much would it cost for a kilo a week back then?
Back then it was costing £3,600 for a kilo.
And how much would you make off that?
This is the sad thing. People think that you make loads of money out of selling drugs, but if you used to sell it in ounces, you'd make probably £20 an ounce. So you're making £700 odd pound off a kilo.
700 profit off 3,600.
If you was to break it down into smaller bits, at the time it was when you used to buy a 3.58, which is non-existent now. So that was making back £160 on an ounce. So you'd be making £60 on an ounce basically.
Plus, he's probably smoking some as well.
Yeah, definitely. That was
there's your profit.
Yeah. I was definitely smoking some.
Scarface's law.
And the thing is, as well, when you're that age and you've got and you've got that around you, you sort of think you're Al Capone a little bit. So you're giving it out to people, and you don't realise you don't have no value for it. You know,
trying to impress your mates and the women.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, so people start growing it then, and you're the electrician.
Yeah.
So specifically, what do you have to go in and do?
So I found a little market there for rigging electric meters. I wasn't just bypassing the meter. I'd do something where we called it a dirty board, and that was the free board basically. So we installed it. So I was charging £600 per time I was doing one of these installations. And once you built up a trust with people, they spoke to their mates, and then they spoke to their mates, and I found myself travelling around the country doing rigging electric meters basically.
How long were you doing that for?
I've probably done it for about two years and made some good money out of it.
So you were like the man in that, with the expertise in that field.
Yeah, well, I was. It was quite a weird. I put myself in a few weird scenarios. Some people wanted to blindfold me and put me in the back of a van to take me to the crop. I'd be travelling to all over the place: Derby, Nottingham, Northampton.
And did you agree to that?
Well, yeah. For my own peace of mind, because if I agreed to be in the back of the van and I didn't know where this place was, I could never be accused of being the one that stole it. So that was always something that niggled me in the back of my mind. At first, it was a bit daunting when someone's telling you to get in the back of a van.
Take us through the very first time you ended up in the back of a van.
So the first time was I was going to Northampton, and this guy, I'd done quite a bit of work for him, built up a trust with him in the end. But the first initial one that I'd done, we drove to a certain place out in the country, outside of Northampton, and he stops the van and he's like, "Look, I want you to get in the back of the van." And I was sat
Did
there.
you know that was coming?
No, I was just not. I wasn't aware of what was coming.
Is it just you and him?
Yeah, it was just me and him. Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, look, I need you to get in the back of the van. I was sort of a bit taken back by it. But once we had a chat and explained the situation, I sort of understood. And
What did he say?
he just said, look, at the end of the day, I don't want you knowing where this place is. It's one of a family home. So it was just basically peace of mind for him. But in the end, I started asking to go in the back of the van, or I was asking to be blindfolded, because it just eliminated me out of that scenario if anything ever happened. So it became quite a regular thing until I built up a trust with these people. Then it got to the stage where we sort of I didn't need to do that, and they trusted me, and we built up that relationship.
Was it a bit scary though, being in the back of a van with blindfold on?
Yeah. It was
Anything could happen. Like,
it was a bit. The first time was really daunting. You just don't know what's going on, do you? You don't know where you're going, who's going to be there, and all the rest of it. But
how long did it take in the back of the van, and what was going through your head?
I was in the back for about 20 minutes. I reckon the guy was just driving around in circles, to be honest with you. But
to throw you off, in case you were clocking the time.
Yeah. But I'm not too sure about that. But that's the kind of impression that I got. I was just nervous, just sat there. I was a young lad in the back of a van with a guy that I didn't really know.
How old were you at this point of the story?
I was probably, again, in my mid-18s, I should imagine. 18, 19, something around that.
So. Right, so 20-minute journey, you're in the back of a van. What happens when you get to the premises?
That's when I went in. He sort of guided me in, so I didn't even know.
He guided you in still with the blindfold.
Yeah.
That's why. Just rip it off.
That's why I had the blindfold on. The blindfold was so he could guide me through there, because I was in the back of a van. I wouldn't have been able to see anything anyway.
Yeah.
But so when I got out of the van,
yeah,
he could walk me into the property without me.
So he's just like holding you, is he?
Yeah.
You like stumbling on things.
Yeah, he brought my tools in and stuff like that. So I went in, and once I was in there, I felt at ease, because I could see I had a job to do. I was just doing what I did, basically. So
you've got your toolbox. What have you got in it?
Just the general electrician's tools.
Which are what?
Just my pliers, cutters, screwdrivers. You need a couple of Allen keys to when you're messing around with the mains incoming supply. Just basic tools, little drill.
And how long did it take you then to do that job?
The first one, I got them down to half a day, so I was earning £600 for half a day's work. But the first couple that I did took a little bit longer, but I got it down to a T in the end, so I was in and out pretty sharpish. So
for them to invest £600, how much free electricity do you estimate they were getting for that?
A lot.
Thousands of pounds.
Yeah. Over a long. Depends how long they were doing it for. Some people that I work for, they done one crop and then moved somewhere else. So these were my more regular customers. So I was going in there every 3 months. I was going in doing a different place for them. Some people just kept them going for as long as they could. I even done a chip shop once. They didn't want to pay for their new fryers that were coming in and stuff like that. So yeah, there was we'd done various different scenarios, to be honest with you.
And is it cash up front in that business?
Yeah, cash up front, yeah.
And do you go back? Is it like repeat customers, or do they refer you to other houses?
Yeah, it was repeat customers, and we got referred to other people as well, referred to friends and stuff like that. So that was, I ended up travelling all around the country doing it. It was something that, it was hard to find someone that people could trust. So the fact that they could trust me to go in there and vouched for by X, Y, and Z, then that was the key thing really for me making money out of it.
This is fascinating. What were the biggest challenges of doing that job?
It was quite simple to do, to be honest with you. It wasn't really a challenge. It was quite straightforward. I'd done one for ourselves, which was on an industrial unit, which cost us £3,000 to get this cable buried from A to B. And we had a scenario where we got busted in one, and they had to get an extension on keeping us in the cells, because it took them 6 hours to find out where the electric board to isolate the supply. We'd done it that well.
Oh, slow down. You got busted in this one.
Yeah, so
let's go back to this. Start how this job come about and everything.
So the one where you got
busted that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I went from basically rigging electricity meters to creating a network of people that were cultivating cannabis, which went well with the market that I was involved in, is in selling it. So
from observing it then and being the electrician, did you then think, right, I can move up in this world now?
Yeah.
We could do this ourselves,
Yeah.
me and my mates. Was it that kind of decision?
Well, I bumped into an old school friend who made the decision, or basically we reacquainted our friendship, should I say? And he was quite a big cultivator. So I was doing I was rigging meters for him, but then we ended up basically working together. So he turned around and said, if you can match one of my properties, he says, we can start working together. I had a use to him because he weren't paying me £600 a time to rig the electric. Any electrical work I could do as well. So I ended up matching a property of his where we ended up cultivating in both of them. The property that I found was the one that we ended up getting, we got busted in.
How did you find that property?
So it was I was doing some work as an electrician for a guy who owned a big potato farm. And it was one of his farmhouses that were on there. So the guy was involved. He knew what we were doing, etc. Really nice guy. He was in his 70s. Loved his women. He had women stashed in caravans all over the place. Yeah, Polish women, all sorts.
Wow.
Yeah, so he had them in caravans, living rent free, and they were his
His harem.
Yeah, his little pastime in the evenings. I think. So he was a cracking guy. I'm not too sure if he's still around now, to be honest with you, but he was he'd work all the hours God sends. He was a proper grafter, old school grafter.
Yeah.
So I put the idea to him about doing what we were doing in his property, and he agreed to it. We were just giving him a cut out of it at a time.
Yeah.
But this was the property where we rigged the electric on. And we hired a digger in, and we dug the cable under the ground, filled it all back in, got the supply into this unit this farmhouse that we were doing. And that's when we started doing our own crops, basically.
So this cable, then, what's that involve?
It was just digging the ground out, running a chunky size cable from a main supply that was in a barn, and running it into the property, and then putting our dirty board on the end of it.
And did you say it cost $3,000 to do all that?
Yeah, well, I had to angle grind walls out and re-cement it back up, so you couldn't see any cabling or anything like that. It was really well done. But we wanted it to be well done because there was people up and around that area, so we had to keep it as hidden as possible.
So was it like you said? It was a farm. Was it quite remote, or could people check things out if they were driving by?
Yeah, I think this is how we ended up getting busted. I think some nosy Parker ended up clocking on to what we're doing and raised some suspicions to the police. So I think that was the reason we ended up getting the door kicked off.
Had you had a run at that place of making profits, or were you just still building it up?
No, we'd had two crops out of it. So we used to do the rooms and alternate rooms. So we'd had one down out of there, which was I think about $22,000, and then we had the other one was only 2 weeks off being took down before when we actually got busted. So we were sort of in the process of getting it provisionally sold before the police kicked the door off. So they kicked the door off whilst we were in there.
How long did it take to grow the first crop?
So we used to have something called like a sea of green setup. It was so we'd have the cuttings in one room being vegged up, and then we had 2 flowering rooms. So once they went into the flowering room, we used to do something called power plant, which was it's classed as a stable strain. So they all grow the same level. They all grow the same. They've got the same genetics. So they would take 10 weeks from the time.
That's fast,
isn't
it?
Put into from when they were put into flower, basically. So
yeah.
We'd already had the ones in veg or vegetative or vegetation, whatever you want to call it, in a centre room, and then they would just feed in the flowering rooms, basically. So
yeah. So the growers I knew in America would tell me about like heat detecting police helicopters and stories of things like that. Is that the case in this country?
I believe they've caught places like that. The most common thing was the electric. So the electric board would be involved, and they'll see a big fluctuation in the electric bills. So that was a common telltale sign that something was going on. And this is why when we'd done our meters, they still paid for the same bill. So they were still paying for the lights and the sockets and the cooker and everything else. But when we added the crop to it, or the lighting, etc., ventilation, that was free. So the bill stayed consistently the same. So that was the reason why we sort of brought this system into place.
So an amateur would just come in and jimmy it in a way whereby it's all over the place, the electricity bill.
Yeah, well, a lot of people just put a wire from the mains into the meter, so they'll bypass it just with the cable going in from A to B, which means you're not paying for any electricity. Or other people would just add the lighting and stuff onto their bill. So that's when it fluctuates and you have a big increase.
And that's how most growers get caught.
That was a telltale sign for people growing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What other things were you wary of during the period of it growing?
Being stolen was the biggest thing.
Oh, were people jacking it?
Yeah, so I mean, when we actually got busted, we'd blocked all of we had one way in and one way out. We'd actually blocked up any other entrances and exits up, so windows were all boarded up, etc.
Do you have like a bodyguard in there with a Mac 10 or anything?
No, nothing to that extreme, mate. So yeah,
had any of the houses been robbed before the police came to this one?
No, not personally. I hadn't been through that experience.
Yeah, that's good.
But again, it's just the prevention side of it, isn't it? If you can prevent it from happening, that's even better.
Yeah.
I mean, a mate of mine, he used to have dogs. He used to keep the different dogs in places and stuff. Vicious dogs as well. So people had different methods of protecting their little income. So.
And did his dogs keep the robbers at bay?
I personally don't know if I know that one of the dogs attacked his missus and
oh dear.
Yeah, it caused her a bit of damage. So
oh dear. So the police have got some intel then, and what year is this when the door gets kicked in?
This would have been about 2008, 2009.
And how old are you in that period of story?
I would have been mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Police have got intel. They kick the door in. Where are you when they kick the door in?
Inside the house.
Who else is inside the house?
There was a guy, I'm going to refer to him as Mr. X.
Okay.
He was the guy that sort of took me on as his apprentice, as he used to call it.
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, I was probably just his lackey. But I still learned the trade of growing cannabis from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in there, and we had an investor in there as well, a guy that we were looking to expand. So we had a guy that came up from London that was going to invest 30 grand into our business, so we could sort of create more open up more properties, basically.
So you're having an investors conference.
Yeah, so we were up there showing him what was going on in the properties, how we'd done it, the ins and outs of it. This guy had only been up for the day from London. He'd not been there any other times prior to this.
You didn't say to him that we've never been busted, you know?
Well, yeah, that would have been one of the conversations.
Was it?
We've had. Yeah,
you telling him that?
Well, it was. The strange thing is when we were actually going to the property. I mean, we were going up there twice a day, and we saw these cars, and they were looking a bit suspicious. So we drove round the roundabout about 3 times, trying to sum up what was going on with these cars and checking to see if anybody was in them, which we couldn't see anybody in there. Decided that it was safe to carry on what we were doing. And we must have been in there a good hour and a half. We were swapping the rooms over, the plants over from one room to another. One had a bit better lighting in there than the other. So we were swapping the plants over and showing the lad how it was all working and where his money was going to be invested and what equipment was needed, etc. And there was a knock at the door, and they knocked at the door and they said police.
Was it a friendly knock at first?
Yeah, it was just a normal knock, and we were like, we thought it was the guy that owned the place, so we were like, we were like, fuck off.
He's pulling a prank.
Yeah, we thought it was just someone prattling around, like the owner. It weren't till we pulled this little curtain back, we saw the badge on the stab vest, and that's when we sort of realised that it was time to try and get out of there. So all the entrances and exits that we'd blocked up, we were trying to get out of. And my mate was literally trying to rip stud walls off.
No!
And next thing, the door's gone through. And they made us stand there for a good 20 minutes with our hands up in the air. And we had to wait.
Are they screaming at you at this point?
Yeah, they were.
They got weapons drawn?
They just had battens. Like the flick-out truncheons.
Yeah. What were they screaming?
Stay still, stand where you are. Just all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite, for me, it was quite intimidating. I was sort of a little bit shocked. It was the worst case scenario had happened. We were waiting to go out for a meal. So my wife now, she was sat waiting for me at home to come back to go out for some food. She was trying to ring us and whatever else, and it ended up that we were at the police. They took us to Rugby police station.
Yeah.
And we were in there for quite a while. They had to get an extension from the officer in charge because it took them 6 hours to isolate the electricity. So they had to keep us in there for a little bit longer until they could isolate the electricity.
Yeah. What does that even mean? Isolate the electricity?
Oh, sorry. It means that they could turn off the supply to the electric to figure out where we stole it from. They had to make that safe before the police could go into the property and start taking fingerprints off everything, and they could start their investigation, if that makes sense.
So do the police have their own electrician they have to bring in?
Yeah,
look at what you've done.
Yeah, they provide their own electrician.
Yeah, and he files a report, does he?
Yeah, it was quite it was quite a mad thing. So they even like praised us on the electricity side of it. They said that's the reason why the whole thing took so long. So.
Yeah, and how did that feel? What with the praise from
Well,
the police?
At the time, it didn't mean sod all, to be honest with you, because I was sort of thinking the worst. Didn't know what was going on.
Had you, prior to the bust, looked at the sentencing guidelines for this kind of crime?
Not really, no. But as soon as I got out, I did. That was the first thing that I was looking at. So
let's go back to the cell then. You're arrested. Your missus is waiting for some food. How do you notify her what's happened?
I think I rang my mum from the police station. It's the only number that I could remember. I couldn't remember anyone's mobile number or anything, so I rang my mum from the police station, and she got in touch with my wife and explained the situation to her. I think they let us out about 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Did bail have to be posted?
Yeah, so we were on bail for. We kept every couple of weeks we had to keep going back answering bail. And they'd re-interview us. I think they were mainly waiting for one of us to grass each other up, but we just basically said no comment to everything. Mr. X, when it was all going on and we were getting put in separate cars, made a point out of saying no comment, no comment, no comment. So that was.
Yeah, the police dragged me out of my apartment when the SWAT team came, and I was yelling at my girlfriend, "I'm exercising my right to remain silent, love. I'm exercising my right to remain silent, love. I'm exercising." Yeah. They just grabbed me and threw me down the stairs.
Yeah, so that's what he was doing. So we ended up getting the tapes off the solicitors, so we could listen back to each other's interviews. Just to double check and just to make sure that no one had said anything that we weren't aware of to get a good cover story, basically. So
that diminished the case then because nobody cooperated.
Yeah, so we ended up got NFA'd for the fact that it was all classed as circumstantial evidence. They had no fingerprints on the equipment, which was down to the fact that when we were misting the rooms, so basically spraying the rooms to create humidity in there, we used to spray everything, including the tops of the fittings and everything. So they had no fingerprints or anything like that. The room was registered to Phil Mitchell, which was the guy from EastEnders that we named it after.
And when you spray the room then, how does that work? How does the spray, and what is the spray, and how does that get rid of fingerprints?
Well, I don't really know. I was just guessing over time, the fact that it's there were metal light fittings, the fact that you've just been spraying it continuously.
Is it just water?
Yeah, it was just water, yeah. So it's just to create a damp environment, and then it will create like a bit of humidity in the rooms, basically. That was the only reason we did it.
So does the evaporation process perhaps remove a fingerprint?
I can't tell you. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that when they dusted the fittings, it came back with no fingerprints on there, which was a godsend for us.
So how long before the raid and before the NFA?
It was about 9 months.
9 months. Were you sweating it?
Yeah, I was.
What was your possible sentence that you found out by this time?
So they estimated the crop at 52 grand with the 2 rooms. So I think we were looking at about 4 years at the time for what we would have been done.
And you'd have to serve 50%.
Yeah, cultivation with intent to supply. So I'm not too sure, because there was 3 of us, whether they would have done us for conspiracy as well, but that wasn't a charge that was being thrown around at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. I mean, I resorted to doing charity work. I was resorting to doing free work for local boxing clubs a local boxing club was being refurbed. So I could get a statement off them to say that I was a good character. I was doing free work for them. I was as soon as it got an FA'd, I sacked that bit off, and yeah.
You weren't thinking, right, this was a close call. I'm going to go on the straight and narrow.
No, unfortunately not. No.
Did the NFA actually give you, like, perhaps if I can get away with this, I can get away with anything attitude?
It was more of a, yeah. I'm guessing it did. Yeah, we thought that we'd put everything that we'd implemented and put into place. We thought was sort of foolproof. So we carried on.
What was the investors' attitude by this point?
Oh, he was absolutely shocked. I mean, he'd got previous with intent to supply. He'd been to jail for it previously, but he'd been living in London for quite a few years. And the fact that he'd just come up from there and we ended up getting busted was, you couldn't have wrote it, to be honest with you.
So was he out of the loop after the bust then with you guys? That was it? He didn't want anything?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with him after
Close
that.
call.
Yeah, it was...
let it be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me and Mr. X carried on what we were doing, basically.
And you're working with the farmer still?
No, the farmer, he got pretty pissed off with us, to be honest with you.
Was he charged?
No. So what he'd done, we had another place. We had a bigger farmhouse up on another farm. And fair play to the guy. He went and emptied everything, put it all into an Arctic, all the equipment and everything, got all put into the back of an Arctic. And he parked the Arctic on the side of a dual carriageway. And he was moving it from A to B, just in case that they figured out that we'd had another one on the other property. So he emptied everything. But we just invested in 1,000 cuttings. So the cuttings are the small plants before they go into the different stages.
Yeah.
So we were ready to do things on a big scale. With this guy's investment as well, these 1,000 plants would have been distributed to all the different properties that we were going to be doing.
Did you have to get a new investor?
No, we scaled things down again. I think it was greed, to be honest with you. I think the fact that we could have just carried on with 2 places, but instead we were looking for bigger places, even talks of an industrial unit at the time. So we decided to go back to basics and just operate from one, basically. So, but the money talks, doesn't it? I mean, we would have been making serious money if we hadn't have been busted. I mean, you if they estimated that one at 52 grand, the other one was nearly twice the size of it. So, I mean, you would have been talking on an alternate rotation, 100 grand plus, which was getting split between three of us plus the guy that owned the properties as well. He was taking a cut out of it as well, but it never got to that stage, unfortunately.
So keep your day jobs, folks.
Yeah,
no matter how
definitely.
much you make, it goes in the end. And they can take everything you've made legally as well, as in my case. All right, so before that bust then, there was a story of a thief in the camp. What was that one?
So we... Mr. X and Mr. X's brother would spend all night trimming and cutting the cannabis ready to be sold. The next day we had a phone call from Mr. X basically saying that someone's been stealing. So straight away I've rang Mr. X's brother and said, "Have you been stealing from the factory?" And he was like, "No, it's nothing to do with me." He says, "I was thinking exactly the same about you." So the two of us were sort of, he came and picked me up and we had a little discussion on the way over to meet him. He rang me up, he said, "Meet us in this car park." So we've turned up to this car park and Mr. X has opened his back door up of the van and he's got a lad tied up there. He pissed his pants where he'd give him a beating. And he turned around and it was a lad that he was working for him and he's got some horses basically. So it was a lad that was doing the work at the horses for him. Had been stealing the cannabis from us. So we weren't aware of this going on at all. And he's turned around to us, he says, "Fill him in, lads, he's been stealing off you as well." And we sort of looked at him and seen that he was a shivering wreck. My mate went to raise his hand up and the lad was cowering in the corner sort of thing. So we didn't do anything. He'd already had his beating. And
How much had he stolen?
Not too sure the ins and outs, but we actually got it all back. So the people that he gave it to, we'd actually got it all back off them, and still charged the lad for what was taken. But we actually managed to get it all back. He was selling it at ridiculous prices as well, so he wasn't even getting the street market value for it, you know. So
How had he accessed it?
so it was kept in. It was moved from where we were cutting it. It was moved to another place. All he was doing was we had padlocks on a door, but it had just normal Phillips screws on it. So he was undoing the screws off the hasp on the lock. And getting in that way and taking it out from there and then putting the screw in it back up again. So as much as we thought it was secure, it was quite a simple method for him to get it, to be honest with you. So the lesson learned went somewhere more secure after that. So
I take it he lost his job.
he worked for, as far as I'm aware, about 6 months for free. He used to have to walk to work as well, and we used to drive past him beeping the horn whilst he was working. Yeah.
Wow. All right, then. So you've relaunched yourself after your bust. What happens on the relaunch?
So we started off on a smaller scale. Just went back to one property. We got a few out of there. I'd probably say. Carried on. I was in and out of it then as well. So I was. He was always doing it. I was sort of fluctuating in and out. Sometimes I'd be involved in it. Sometimes I wouldn't, sort of thing. I was working in the exhibitions as well at the time as an electrician. So I was travelling around the country doing the exhibition show. So it was sort of as and when. But we had another one busted. This time none of us were in there. And he rang me up, Mr. X, and he said, property's been done again. The old biller in there, and he said, "Can you drive past and have a look?" So we drove past the front of the property. There was nothing there, nothing going on. Thought it was all okay, and I knew the next door neighbour, so I rang the next door neighbour up and said to her, "What's going on next door?" She says, "Oh, nothing." She says, "Someone's in there. I can hear Mr. X talking." I was like, "Right, okay." I knew Mr. X wasn't there because I'd been on the phone to him and he'd been telling me that something was going on. About half an hour later, she's rang me back and said, actually, it's the police. They were stood in the back garden having eaten a Subway, so they'd obviously been to get some food, and that's when we realised that they were in there. That's when we prepped a lad. Spent about 3 hours telling him the layout of the property, etc., and then dropped him off outside the house and let him walk in there, so looking shocked. Bless him.
So did you lose that house then?
Yeah, that was another one that went. But if we were to weigh up the pros and the cons of it all, we had two that were busted. There was more pros than there was cons to the whole thing. So,
what was your next move?
From there, I came out of it then. They basically, I came to the conclusion that if I was to get caught in one again, then I'd be going to jail. That was something that I didn't want to do.
You had a long-term partner as well. Did you have family considerations?
Yeah, so I met my girlfriend when I was 17. She was a few years older than me. I think I was just turning 18. She was 24. And I met her because her ex-partner, I used to sell cannabis to him, so I'd drop him a couple of ounces off on a Friday and go back and pick the money up the following Friday. That's how I sort of met her. Then they split up and we bumped into each other at a local sports club that we used to drink at and sort of operate from. And it just went on from, rekindled a relationship with her. Her kids at the time were 3 and 4. So this is the reason why I sort of went down the route that I did, because I felt as if I had to provide for these from such a young age. I lost my job when I was just past 18, which was my apprentice electrician. So the only option that I really saw for myself was to carry on pushing, selling the ganja. So, and that was what sort of provided for us for a decent amount of time.
So it was motivated in good motivation behind it, family considerations, and paying the bills.
Well, the thing is, that's what you tell yourself at the time. Now I'm older and wiser, and you can reflect on things. I probably would have earned more money just doing things normally. Didn't have to worry about my door being kicked off. by the police or somebody else. You know, I didn't have to look over my shoulder all the time. And this is the mindset of kids, I think, and being younger. You look up to the wrong people. If you surround yourself with positive people, then your outcome in life is going to be more positive. If you surround yourself with criminals, you haven't got a good future, to be honest with you. That's
You're very lucky you didn't end up with the missus and the kids visiting you in prison, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I put my missus through so much. She stuck by me through everything. I mean, I was a Jack the Lad sort of thing. I was unfaithful to her. I was caused loads of problems. We had cars petrol bombed outside the house.
Oh, hold on. Cars petrol bombed over what?
That was over. So basically, there was an incident where we'd fell out with certain people.
Who's we?
Well, me and
Mr.
X.
X. Yeah.
And there was a big little feud going. Well, I say big little, a big feud going on between various other people in the town.
And you'd fallen out with him over what?
That was just over. It was pettiness, to be honest with you. I think it was over an outstanding debt. Another guy was the guy that was overseeing the other lad that actually petrol bombed it. They had a bit of a feud with Mr. X, and it just went on from there. It was just tit for tat.
So they owed X money, did they?
Yeah. It was just tit for tat nonsense. Yeah.
And then you got young egos and testosterone involved.
Yeah. It was actually the car got petrol bombed on my wife's birthday.
Jeez.
We got woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning with the next door neighbour banging on the door saying, your car's on fire, quick, get up. My missus' daughter had her friend round to stay for the first time. She'd just passed her driving test. She was 17 at the time. And her car was right next to my van that had been petrol bombed, so we had to go out and move that.
Wow.
I brought my young lad a quad bike, so that was in the back of it as well. That got burnt. We still live at the same place now, but it's got the outline of where the van was burnt, all the tarmac and everything. Yeah.
When you saw it burning, did you know it was because of that beef with X?
Yeah.
You're kind of anticipating something to happen.
I didn't, like I said, I never really had many enemies, so it quickly put two and two together and came up with what it was. So, but in my opinion, it was a bit of karma as well, you know, because in essence, what goes around comes around, sort of thing. So we were by far from angels. We were doing things along similar lines, etc. So the fact that it turned full circle was just collateral damage, you know. It was just part and parcel of what we were doing. So
I could see that going two ways. Then you could be like, wow, you know, these people are hitting my family now. This is getting really crazy. I need to de-escalate the situation. Or you could be like, wow, these guys hit my family now. I need to hit back hard at them. What was your mindset?
I left it for Mr. X to deal with, to be honest with you. I sort of took a bit of a step back, you know. Mr. X he's quite a well-known person around where we live and all over the place, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I sort of left him to deal with it to a certain degree. I felt as if my family were in jeopardy and more threatened. It scared the life. I think my lad was about 7. He got woken up by obviously the car being on fire or the van being on fire.
Yeah.
It affected my sleep for a couple of days. You know, if you hear the slightest noise outside, I was up at the window looking out, etc. So,
did you feel the need to have weapons or anything?
I was. I had a knife. I used to keep a meat cleaver by my door. My kids could never open the front door. I'd always have to open the door. It was just that was the life that we were living. You know, although it's only cannabis, it's still people still want a piece of the cake. You know, and
all this criminality because it's illegal. It's absolutely pathetic. None of this would have happened if we had a legal, regulated drug market, kids getting, you know, kept away from it and just educated about the dangers of it, and adults being able to do what the hell they bloody well want to do with their own bodies. But instead, we've got all this.
Yeah,
madness.
That's what it was. It was madness. But I look back to it now, and it was the whole thing was quite petty. You know, it was. I mean, some of the feuds that we had were petty. Some of the things that we done to people were petty. The thing is, my kid, he's 15 now, Jacob, and he's been a product of his environment. he used to sit there helping us count money and things like that, you know. And it, he's grown up now to be someone that sort of inspires to look at the wrong people. And it's quite a daunting, worrying thing, really, to see what sort of route he's going to go down. But I'm to blame for the situation because we were too blasé. I think a lot of parents think it's okay for their kids to grow up in these situations, witnessing different scenarios, and don't expect them to go down the same path as them. They expect them to. I did anyway. I do as I say, not as I do, sort of thing. But in reality, now he's hit this age, it's completely different. He's witnessed a lot of stuff, and he throws it back in my face as well. He quite openly says to me, "Well, what do you expect? You've done this and you've done that." And what can I say to that? Can't argue with him. And this is one of the reasons why I'm on a path now to make a difference and to show him that you can change. And there is positive things out there without having to be an arsehole, basically. So
good. All right. So in the story, then, you've brought heat to the family, literally. How long has it taken for this fire to go out?
So the fire brigade came. There was people outside filming it on their phones. It was making the tyres exploded. It made a bit of a mess, to be honest.
So all the neighbours coming out.
Yeah, neighbours are out. Everything. I should imagine probably about 20 odd minutes. But the fire brigade put the whole thing down to being a electrical fire, is what they said it was. So they're basically saying that it wasn't deliberately started. It was caused by an electrical fire. Yeah. So I don't know how they came to that conclusion, to be honest with you. But
perhaps that's less stuff they have to report and file on.
Yeah, quite possibly. Well, the mad thing is, I was probably about, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning. It must have been. We had the police pull up then telling us we had to get rid of the vehicle because it was causing an obstruction to the street, basically, and it was classed as dangerous for the people that lived on the street. We were just trying to come to terms with the fact of what had happened, and you know, and then they're telling us that if we don't, then this X, Y, and Z is going to happen. They're going to have to get it towed away, and we'll be charged for it, and you just couldn't write it, basically. So,
what's the procedure to get rid of a car like that at 7 a.m?
It was new to me, mate. So I was, I didn't really know what to do. Ended up getting the scrap man to come and get it. So
yeah, so that was that. It's just an insurance write-off at that point.
Yeah. Couldn't claim off the insurance. Well, I didn't claim off. The van was only worth 500 quid anyway. It was just an Astra sort of van. So
you and the family have been up all night. Does your missus have a word with you? Does she know about the beefs and this is criminal?
Yeah, my missus has always sort of kept out of everything. You know, what she didn't know was probably for the best sort of thing. So she only stepped in when she needed to step in, and that was one of the times when she sort of said, "Look, it's
getting a bit close to home."
Yeah. Things are getting pretty bad." So that's when I sort of stood back and noted what she was saying, and yeah.
So the love of a good woman pulled you out of the lifestyle.
I've been with her 19 years, you know. So we got married last January, but 19 years we've been together. So must be something good there.
Definitely. So you got married last January. Was there any like over the years? Was she like, "Come on, when are we going to the altar?"
Yeah. There was a bit of. I didn't think she kept saying to me once she gets to a certain age she's not going to get married. I think that was a subtle hint to say, "Come on, hurry up," sort of thing.
Oh, that's sweet to have a nice story like that against the backdrop of the criminality. All right, so you stopped your criminality, but then you got on the new vape juice. What was all that about?
So from the proceeds of, my mate always said to me that you can't go around buying fancy cars. You need to spend it on certain things, holidays, jewelry, etc. So at one stage we were going away 4, 5, 6 times a year to different places. We went to New York, Turkey many times. We went all over the place. And this vape juice, so because I like smoking ganja, I've always been a smoker. There was this vape juice that came around, and we were under the impression it contained THC and all the rest of it. But the beauty to me was I could get it through the airports, so I could smoke it wherever I was going, basically. even in the airport. You know, it was had a similar effect to smoking cannabis. But it turns out, and this is an issue now with the kids. I don't think the kids realise what they're smoking, but this is a big thing in with the youth of today of what they're smoking. I tested it, and it ended up being a form of pre-gabbling, pent-gabbling or something like that. So it's basically like a painkiller, or I think it was an epilepsy drug. I know that they use it in jails as well to get high on. It was a liquid form of that. Which ended up being, it messed me up basically. It doesn't do it to everyone, but personally it messed my mental health up, and that was the reason why I ended up having a big breakdown.
So it's got this is a concoction of chemicals, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yes,
and
pharmaceuticals.
THC.
So that it's being sold and palmed off as being THC content, but it's got no THC content in it whatsoever.
It's just a sales job.
It's a pharmaceutical drug that's been. It's a liquid form of some pharmaceutical drugs, basically.
Again, this isn't the craziness of drug laws. The chemists are constantly producing stuff like this to try and outsmart drug laws, and this stuff would not exist. Go on.
It is bad because you've got kids nowadays that are smoking it, thinking that they're actually smoking cannabis or a form of cannabis. It's not at all, and it's messing people up. It sent me mad. Literally nearly sent me to my grave, to be honest with you.
Go over your use of it in the beginning. How long you were on it, and what led to these side effects?
So, it started off as a thing. So I was quitting smoking cannabis and then starting again, and I started on the vape. Realised that there's got to be something out there that contains THC that could do a similar job. This stuff that we came across, this pharmaceutical stuff, it had no smell to it. That it came in flavours, so to anyone else it was just a normal vape liquid, but really it was getting you high. Started off smoking that must have been smoking it for 12 months, I think. Started getting real mad suicidal thoughts, which just got worse and worse and worse. To the point where I was locking myself in my house for days upon end. I wasn't going out. A good friend of mine used to come and knock on the door. He knew I'd turn my phone off. I was uncontactable. I'd sit in my dressing gown, just sitting on the sofa, watching TV. Then I'll fall asleep, wake up, have another few puffs, watch more TV, maybe make a cup of tea. That was my routine, and that was going on for. I wouldn't leave the house sometimes for 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7 days. Just sat there festering away, basically.
And were you like eating and not exercising?
Yeah, no, I was eating.
You was eating.
That's something that it did. It did give you the kind of munchy effect. So I was definitely eating. But a mate of mine knew what I was doing, and he'd come and bang on the door, stick his head through the letterbox. He'd do whatever until I opened the door, basically. Because I'd sit there and ignore it. I wouldn't even open the door normally, you know. I'd just sit there and ignore it. And I knew it would be him because he'd be sticking his head through the letterbox and shouting and banging on the door. Yeah, so that was the. It didn't take long for it to go from bad to worse. I'd probably say a couple of months where I was every day thinking about a different way of killing myself.
Oh my goodness!
Didn't think I could tell anyone because I didn't think that I just thought I was a waste of space. You know, I didn't think that anyone would really listen or anyone was really bothered. So it was, it was bad. I ended up leaving the house one day. I went to a friend of mine's because he was smoking it as well. So we sort of used to have a little chat and a little vape together. And I just sat there and just burst out into tears. But it was like uncontrollable. It just happened. And he was a bit took back, and I was apologising for crying and saying, "Flipping heck, I don't know what's wrong with me. Sorry." And that's when we sort of realised that I needed to open up to my missus. So I went back, spoke to my wife, broke down again, and to her it was a massive relief. She thought that I was up to no good because I was being weird, but she couldn't put a finger on why I was being weird.
Had she had words with you prior to this?
I think it was causing more problems in the relationship because she thought I was probably cheating on her or something like that. I was up to no good. I was hiding things from her. So it was causing doubts in her mind of what was going on. when I did actually burst out into tears and I explained the situation to her, she actually said it's like a massive weight off her shoulders, because now she can understand why I've been the way I've been. Now she can start to help me sort myself out, basically, which she did. She booked the next few days off work and she sat with me for a few days, and we put a plan of action together of what I was going to do. I spoke to the doctors. Doctors tried to fob me off with more tablets, antidepressants, which I refused to take. I was self-medicating with drugs myself, you know. I didn't want to go and start taking something else just to add into the mix. So we came to the conclusion that I was going to take myself out of the whole environment and go over to my little brothers in Ireland. And that's what I'd done. I just went over there, slotted into his way of life. My lad at the time was, I think he was 14. And this is what no 14-year-old should have to go through. But if it wasn't for him being with me at the airport, he was the adult at the time. I felt like the kid. I was having anxiety, panic attacks. He was the one that got me through passport control, got me on the aeroplane, got me to the other side. If he wasn't with me, I don't think I would have even gone to Ireland.
Shout out to you, lad. Well done.
Yeah, I don't think I would have even gone home either. You know, that was the sort of got to that point in my life where I just don't know what the outcome of that would have been, and that's always sort of hung over my head, is in what would have happened, because I know I wouldn't have got on the plane. So at that time, he was the responsible adult, and I felt like the child. You know, it's something that no kid should ever have to go through, to be honest with you. So,
and what was the Irish lifestyle like?
Just laid back, mate. Southern Ireland, we spend a lot of time over there anyway.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Countryside and everything. We out in the sticks.
Yeah. Can't think of where he lives now, to be honest, but it's on between Limerick and oh bloody hell, my mind's gone blank. It was Galway, so it's sort of in between them, but it was in the middle of nowhere. There's not a lot there.
It's like getting cured by nature, isn't it? Instead of bloody meds.
There's not a lot there. Just about 20 pubs in in a 200-meter range, sort of thing. So. But it was during lockdown as well, so they were in lockdown, so all the pubs were shut, so I couldn't go and sort of substitute one thing for another. I went over there, slotted into his lifestyle, went to work with him.
What's his job?
He's a chef, so just tagged along with him and what he was doing, and that was the turning point, really.
So were you working in the kitchen?
No, I was just being a nuisance, to be honest with you.
Eating the food?
Yeah, just tagging along, just sort of just doing not a lot, really, but that's what I needed.
Yeah, rest.
Yeah, I needed time out without the everyday stresses and everything else. I mean, one of the causes of it all was I had a garage business. I had a few lads working for me, renovating garages, and that was going a bit tits up. So I had the stresses of that. I had the stresses. The lads that I had working for me, they were good lads, but needed babysitting, so I had the stress of that as well. Then obviously this vape juice that I was taking, it was just a build up of multiple things. I think when you get older as well, you build a conscience, and things slowly creep up and bite you on the arse that you would never expected. If you'd said to me 12 months prior to this that I would have had a breakdown and I would have been suffering with depression, my answer to that would have been, "Is this for the weak people, blah de blah," because I was naive to it, you know. It's just something that I never thought would happen, but until it happens to you, it's a massive wake up call, and I've got a lot of respect for these people that are dealing with depression on a daily basis. You know,
I'm sure there's a lot of them watching this right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you said, until you go through it, you don't understand it. You know, and I quickly got to understand the ins and outs of it and how it affects you in different ways. One day you could be fine, the next day you could be at the lowest point in your life. You know, so.
How long did you spend in Ireland?
I was just over there for 10 days, but it was the best 10 days of my life. It was a turning point for me in my whole life. I came back, and just things. I was always money orientated before. Everything was all about money, making money. I came back and my whole life, my outcome on life was completely different. The things that were important to me was my family, my wife, who I caused a lot of problems over the years, and I'd never put her through any of that again. My son, who grew up watching me being I wouldn't say I was an absent father. I've always been a good dad, but I've been in and out, sort of doing my own thing as I please, you know. So he became my priority. Do I think now that it's probably a little bit too late? I should have done it years ago, but I'd say it's never too late to try and make a difference, you know. And the outcome of the biggest positive outcome of it was the knife campaign that we set up.
So you started out talking about the starting of the knife campaign. How long has the campaign been going now, and who have you got on board?
So it's been going since August. We set the campaign up in a lockdown. What we've achieved in this amount of time is amazing. We've done so much within our community and other people's communities. We've got some amazing people on board, many guests that you've had on here.
Do you want to reel them off?
Yeah, so we've got Terry Ellis, Vinnie Bradish, Chet Sandu, Brian Cockrell, Chris Lambriano. We've got PGA golf player that's helped us out quite a bit, Andy Sullivan. The list is endless, to be perfectly honest. We've got Leroy Smith that helps us out. Who else have we got on board? They're our main players. Mainly Terry Ellis has helped me so much through all of this.
Great guy.
Yeah. He's sort of he's the voice of reason, you know. And Brian as well. Brian, I've got a lot of respect for Brian. He's a top guy. He's got a heart of gold. And Emma as well, his wife. I've spent quite a few days up there staying with them. So as a group, we're making a big impact on the community, not just locally where I live, but all over the place. So a few of the initiatives that we've set up is we've got a knife crime hotline, which has basically been implemented in schools. So for the kids who feel as if they can't speak to their parents or they don't want to speak to the police, then we're sort of a confidential midpoint for them. You know, we're not there to criticise or judge. We're there to listen. And the idea is they can tell us where concealed weapons are. It's all confidential. We can be a signpost entity if they're having problems with issues at home or if they're having problems with drugs, alcohol. We can signpost them to the right place. Obviously, there's an element of it that is involved. If they're going to tell us that X, Y, Z is going to happen and he's going to get hurt or injured, then we've got a duty of care to report that to the right people. But again, it's as confidential as it can be. So we set up something called the Gear Up scheme, which provides less fortunate kids with the funding to go to boxing clubs, football clubs, provides them with the equipment that they need, which was based around Kieran. So when Kieran, the lad that got stabbed, he used to turn up in boots that were too small for him, dirty football kits, etc. Sometimes no shin pads. So it was to provide these kids with the tools and the equipment to be able to attend these sports facilities. Even subs as well. So if they're struggling with subs, then we'll pay for the subs for them to attend these sports facilities. We've done a lot. We've got ambassadors now that are based all over the country, up and down the UK. So these ambassadors represent their area. Again, just creating links between sports facilities, local authorities. And it's something that we liaise with. Lockdown's been tough for everybody because no one's really been able to get out and do anything. But what we've achieved in that amount of time, I think our Facebook page now, we've got over 10,000 followers on there. We're self-funded, so everything we do, it comes via donations, or we don't like just to put a GoFundMe page up without actually earning it. So the admin team, Terry Ellis, Vinny, Darren Barden, we all done a sponsored run, walk, ride. So who could ran it. If you could walk it, then you walked it. I rode it, but it was like a half marathon, so we raised funds through that. We brought something called a bleed control kit for Leamington. So if you end up becoming a victim of knife crime, or even if you're shot, anything with a serious wound, it stems the bleeding. It gives the ambulance time to get there. So it could only could save you or prolong your life for 3 or 4 minutes, but it's the 3 or 4 minutes extra that it takes for the ambulance to arrive.
Wow.
So we've got that based in Leamington next to the train station, which is a key place for county lines in our area because it's obviously easy access from the bigger cities and stuff. So we've got that base there next to the train station. Yeah. So.
And the frustrating thing is always the laws, isn't it, and the government. And did you try to become a county councillor?
Yeah. So again, this is the sort of mindset that I'm at. So I was that fed up with being knocked back and refused and not being listened to by these authorities that I decided that I'm going to put myself in the position and run to be county councillor in my local area, which was the Brunswick ward. Although I only got 21 votes, I've made a big impact. In my eyes, I'm still a winner because they know who I am now. You know, all of these people know who I am. I wore the campaign logo when I went there, and my policies were based around cleaning up the parks from needles, making it a safe place for the kids to play and families to enjoy. It was knife crime, and it was knife crime county lines and opening up more youth services. All key major issues that are going on in our town and every other town. I mean, we've done a couple of knife sweeps in the local parks, and it was actually quite shocking to see how many needles were within meters away from kids' play areas, and it was actually sickening. You know, and I mean this isn't just in Leamington. This is happening everywhere. Personally, I don't think enough's being done about it. So they were my policies, but I'm still a winner in my eyes because I've managed to create a meeting now with all of these people, the Police Crime Commissioner locally from Warwickshire, all these different town and county councillors, the mayor. So, excuse me, they're starting to listen now, but that's only because I've stamped my feet and I've put myself out there and I've made them aware of what we're doing and who we are and these issues that are out there. So in my eyes, I only got 21 votes, but I've made a scene, you know, and they're starting to listen now. So
next time round, you could get a lot more than that as well.
Yeah, well, we've just created something. It starts on the 1st of this month, 1st of June. Pop-up boxing sessions, so they're free to the kids from age 10 to 16. It's just the basics of boxing, but we're doing these in different areas, in different village halls or different community centres. To take kids off the street and give them the chance to learn something different. So
yeah.
We're also partners in a boxing club. So we're partners with a Leamington Amateur Boxing Club. So we're affiliated with them. So we've achieved so much. I mean, I'm probably missing bits off, but we've achieved a lot in such a short amount of time, you know, with limited funding as well. We're quite resourceful. We're dealing with ex-bank robbers and things like that. So these guys are quite resourceful when it comes to coming up with ideas, etc.
So what I'm sure the viewers are going to love about this story then is you're just out there in the world making changes to make it a better place for young people. You've not just come here and told us a story. I mean, you are actively, could be saving lives, what you're doing.
I'd like to think so. I mean, it's we're never going to change what's going on, not without the intervention of higher people, politicians and the police forces, etc. But if we can save one life, then I think that's a job well done, you know. So
we're going to put all your links in the description box below this video. What social media platforms are you on and how can people contact you?
So our main social media platform is Facebook, Change Your Life, Put Down Your Knife. We're on Instagram as well. So they're our main platforms. Facebook, I'd say, is our main platform that we use. We've also got a charity boxing event being set up for August the 21st, which has got a few professional boxers on there. It's a lad called Scott Dixon is fighting. He's an ex-world champion, Scottish guy, really nice guy. I'm fighting on there as well, and so is various other people. But the main element of that is we've got a massive meet and greet thing going on. So we've got the likes of the people I named earlier, Chris Lambriano, Chet Sandhu, Charlie Richardson's wife, Ronnie Richardson, Lenny McLean's daughter. Gary Furby, the governor, Norman Buckland, another governor. We've got so many. Leroy Smith's going to be there. The list's endless. Billy Moore's going. I've been talking to Marvin Herbert. I believe that he's going to be attending. So there's a lot of people going, all showing their support.
What part of the country?
Coventry.
And people can find information and get tickets to this, can they, on your socials?
Yeah, so if they go onto our social media platform, we've got a page set up for it as well. It's called Fight Night Live 2021. And that just gives you all the up-to-date information of who's attending. Joe, Billy's brother, do you know Billy Moore?
Yeah, I've worked with Billy over the years, actually, and read his book. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
So the one I'm looking forward to meeting Joe, because I've been following their story with the raising awareness for autism. Joe's Billy's brother.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to meeting him. I think he's a great guy, and I think what he's doing is amazing as well. So
yeah, another great mission. So I'm sure you're going to get a lot of people reaching out and contacting you on the socials. A huge thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the people watching?
I just think don't be fooled by this stigma of your average person that carries a knife nowadays. Don't be afraid to search your kids' bags and search their bedrooms. You can't stereotype someone that's carrying a knife nowadays. It could be anybody. Don't be fooled to thinking that your son's an exception just because you provide him with the latest gear, the latest phones, the latest trainers. It's more of materialistic things don't matter nowadays with these kids. It's more of a culture that they're going through. Just be aware and stay safe.
So let us know in the comments what you thought about this interview. Huge thank you to all the new subscribers. Subscription logo is in the bottom corner of the screen. And like I said earlier, all of Ben's links are going to be in the description box. All our links are down there. Huge thank you to the people who follow through on the links and support our missions. And biggest thank you of all to you, Ben, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it, man.